Hi all, it's Sphere System here. Specifically me. Don't quite know who. Whatever. You can see the yeah, quite who I am, but this is going to be a video on color programming, and yeah. So obviously content warnings for TBMC stuff, and um, have attempted to scramble, but no, it's an attempt, so you know it's unlikely to be perfect, but an attempt has been made. I'll be looking out as I'm going as well, in case there's something that taking missed in terms of scrambling. I can spot it and scramble it. Anyway, color programming is used to basically know types of programming and types of headmates in this. It's common for groups to have particular colors that they use within the group that are unique, not necessarily unique to the group, but um, that are that group's color sets. Right. Okay. Yeah, they'd like to have color salsa charts for um, for the group, which will mark out what colors are used within the group. These sometimes they're shared with aligned groups, but not always. Some groups do not share and have a private color salsa chart that is only used. Well, not necessarily only used. There are limited sets of colors, so there's a chance they'll end up with some shared color chart anyway, just based on probability. But the idea is they don't share it with anyone, with other groups. That it's theirs. They might have the information available to aligned groups in case of recapture and the like, but that color salsa chart will be theirs and not a shared one. Of course, sometimes aligned groups do just use the same color salsa chart as well, because that makes cooperation and stuff easier sometimes. But it's definitely not, that's going to vary between groups, so can't depend on that one way or the other. Okay. And it's common to have the connected colors act as salsa cues. Often where salsa colors will be used for types that are less. There's less desire for them to front in. There's more control over when they front. Basically, it's much easier if you've got a color salsa cue for fronting. You don't want, and it's a headmate that either or doesn't want out in public for whatever reason. You're not going to use, for example, you wouldn't use grey if they're city based, because there's going to be grey around all the time. So that's a very poor choice. In fact, grey is generally a poor choice of colour for any, no matter the location, for as a colour salsa cue for any headmate that isn't designed to be out in public. But it might be used regardless, depending on location. Of course, there's going to be locations where it's not a poor enough choice to not, for whatever other reason, make it the chosen color. There might be specific things in the primary programming locations that where that's going on, where that actually makes it a sensible color choice again, for example. But regardless, your yeah, or it's also likely to be, especially for those who they don't want coming out randomly, you're likely to, rather than just use the color as a salsa cue, use specific exposure salsa styling, or have a combination of cues including the color, rather than depending entirely on the color for the salsa cueing. Yeah, okay. First example here would be Red Sphere, who yeah, so red was probably still is used in where we were to demark programmers. So red sphere, of course, as a subsystem, holds the majority, if not the entirety, of our programming salsa headmates who were well, yeah, you'll know. Sure. You've yeah, you can see Redsphere's intro. Redsphere done an introduction. I think Redsphere's done an introduction. If not, well, we'll link it in the description if it has been done at the time of this video, and if not, when it does get done, try and remember to link it then. So check the description if you haven't seen it and you want to. It's relatively light on TBMC stuff because, you know, it's an introductory video, but it might be helpful, so just to give some context there anyway. Anyway, there's obviously some disconnect between RS and a lot of the rest of the system just because of the significant difference in experience, you know, because you know, they had a very different salsa experience compared to those of us outsider. We are working through it together, you know, all of us, basically, because it's a joint work. This, you know, and as willingness to cooperate has been hugely salsa valuable, given the insights and salsa knowledge available, because, you know, the from the other side of the coin, there's useful information to be gained. Basically, when you can look at things from both sides, there's useful information. So having that available has been incredibly valuable. You know, not to say that it's required for progress or anything. It's just it helped us a lot. Anyway, there's relatively common to use common L12 color for safe salsa lifers as a cue, potentially, you know, because you want, the idea is to have the safe salsa lifers cued out whenever you are in a safer life position. So using a color cue for that can be incredibly helpful. Not the only option, but it is certainly one of them. It's likely to not be as likely to be front cues as well for them, because you know, if you're using a common color as your front cue, you don't then want the safe salsa lifer coming out outside of safe lifetimes because of that color. So you have stronger overrides cues in place that can be used whenever leaving safe salsa life bases. Although to call it safe life, you know, we've gone into this. Safe life is a bit of a misnomer. You know, it's safer, but regardless, you know, that's the idea there. Okay, breaking color programming is going to need significant amounts of work. Right, a significant chunk of it is going to be in basically just in communicating between different colors, given the degree of separation that often exists, you know, with different salsa roles and the experiences, you know, that puts together often different set of viewpoints and perspectives on your past and on current situations, which, you know, especially when it comes to knowledge regarding, the Salsa trauma and, um, you know, safety, things like that. And it can be a good example for this is obviously safe lifers may well not see the level of danger and risk because they haven't been exposed to it, and the lack of communication between them and those of other colours and roles, is likely to lead to a poor grasp on what actually is going on in terms of risk and danger, and they may well dismiss what the evidence there is for higher danger because they haven't experienced it. So, and they've got, but this is where communicating and sharing those experiences is incredibly important. It's might well be useful, especially to use a physical to use physical copies or digital copies of a lot of those shared experience of those not shared experiences, writing them down somewhere for others in the system to see and find, because it's harder to deny that in many ways. There does, of course, need to be significant care taken if you're not in a safe space and you're doing this because of the risks involved there, but it could well be helpful. So do consider that potentially as a thing to do. Yeah, especially more negative Salsa ones that are the ones most likely to be denied. Having those written down is like to help somewhat. Yes, okay. Alright, okay. Most subsystems will have a mixture of colours when colours being used. At least one leadership colour. You know, um, there's unlikely, um, you know, you can have pure colour subsystems, of course. We've got Red Sphere, for example, who pretty pure red, pretty much pure red. Um, there, and the other color that you're more likely to end up with pure leadership colors as well, although those are subsystems and groups less likely to front often, but they do, and of course if you've got leader types inside subsystems, they're unlikely to front within them as well, likely to take a relatively back role compared to the rest of the system, which makes communicating with them more difficult often, which is frustrating. Yes, frustrating, because turns out a lot of time, if you want to help a subsystem, the people you most need to reach inside that subsystem are the leaders, because they're the ones with the most capability to reprogram and enforce the rules, and so you know they're kind of the ones you need to reach, and are also like to be the ones in the subsystem who've had the least negative experiences because fronting less, and also just as leadership roles, they were likely to have been given relatively good treatment. That's a lot of how not the only way leadership stuff is done, but it's often part of it is in if you give those types more privilege and stuff, they'll feel it helps enforce the idea that they're better, and the idea that if people just follow along and do as is told, they'll get you give leadership types perks and then go, look, if the rest of the people you're leading also follow along, they'll also get these perks. It helps in them. The idea of enforcing those rules becomes better because it's like, yeah, but I'm helping them. I'm giving them access to these perks. Good thing. And it's like, yeah, but you're not really. But of course, that's the viewpoint they've been fed their entire life, their entire existence. So it can be hard to break, and will often require communication with. Often the best choice is deprogram leaders from elsewhere who have gone through a similar thing. But of course, if you don't have any, you're going to have to make do and communicate with them with whoever you do have available. Ideally, someone relatively persuasive with relatively negative experiences, possibly someone from the same subsystem if you can, although that depends a lot on the vibe of that subsystem, so do try and read that before going for that. You know, that might just be seen as jockeying for the leadership position, which could go badly, obviously. Yes, but also they are incredibly useful allies when they're deprogrammed because they can do a lot to help within that subsystem, and then also help with other subsystems. Often in terms of, access, they're more likely to have communication lines to the other leaders more easily available and with a high level of trust and so on available, which is helpful, of course. Far from a guarantee, because it can be possible for it's not a guarantee that headmates of the same color will get on or have any level of trust whatsoever. It's quite possible that certain colors will have been part of that color setting will have been to distrust everyone else with that color. Something along the lines of "I'm the only true red," for example, right? And so, if that is the case, then it often becomes difficult for people of the same color to actually then communicate in a trustworthy manner until that idea has been lost, because they see the other people as fakes, as falsehoods, as liars, basically, and that will go both ways, and so communication can happen, yes, but it's unlikely to be useful in terms of getting ideas across, building trust, or anything like that. So, going to have to spend a lot of time basically working out the vibes of different colours and what exactly has been entailed within that colour for your own system, because that's going to vary heavily. Yeah, okay. See. Yeah. But yes, no, so obviously a lot of subsystems like to be mixed in colour. Have various different types within there. Depending a lot of, may well see a lot of subsystems have a leadership type color, possibly a programmer color, and then if that's something, if internal reprogramming is a separate color, internal reprogramming color or just programming color, depending on whether or not they're separated out, as well as, of course, whatever the main purpose of that subsystem is there as well, if it isn't one of those two, which a lot of them aren't, but likely to see both of those colors inside most subsystems as well, because those are used basically to maintain the subsystem and keep it in line, whilst then, and those are, and then the rest of the subsystem will fulfill whatever the actual role is, basically, under supervision from those headmates, possibly only two, depending on the size of the subsystem, possibly even only one, doing both, in a particularly small subsystem, but that's less likely. It's often viewed more sensible to have one of each where possible, and but if the subsystem is only 3 people, if the group is only if that particular task force is only 3, it's 3 people doing the actual role, you don't want to add 2 more people to that mix necessarily, because that dilutes it too much. So you'll have one, or possibly even co-op one of those 3 to also fulfill those other 2 roles, depending a lot, of course. It's going to vary from group to group, and the potential expansion of that subsystem, and so on and so forth, and of course the complexity involved in leadership and reprogramming for that group. Yeah, okay. Let's see. Yeah. Oh yeah. larger color groups, if you've got a large single color group, or even, well, yeah, if you've got single color groups that aren't leadership types, or even leadership types potentially, but you're going to see outside controllers then, who aren't part of the group but have control over that group essentially to some degree. They're going to be the ones who internally do some level of enforcement and stuff. Have leadership positions over that group, even though they're not part of it. They're basically the boss of that group, regardless of not being a member of the group. And that's going to be in situations where it might have been there's a desire for a single overall leader, for example, or a leader for a set of functions who are separated out, who are separate colours, but who work together. You don't want them in the same group because you want each of those colours to be uniquely specified out into their own group, and then have a leader who oversees all those groups to make sure they're coordinating together and working together to achieve the overall aim. But because you want those colours separated out, because it's more the colour programming holds better or whatever that's likely to be it. Single colour groups often hold colour programming better. So if you want that to be definitely be held, then you go for a group of a series of single colour subsystems who are together make up something else. Who fulfill some role or task that requires multiple colours. And then you'll have a leadership potentially group or single individual who's of leadership colour overseeing all of that. Might be part of a larger leadership group as well, or the leadership subsystem. Yeah, okay. I think that's everything we wanted to say. This system signing out. Hope to catch you all next week. Please do remember to like, subscribe, comment, especially if you've got any questions you want answered. Be happy to answer them either in the comments or in another video. So catch you all next week.